Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Fit Till 30. As always, I am your host Tudor, and thank you for joining me as usual each Wednesday to discuss various topics in health and fitness. For today, I want to talk about a subject that poses, I think, a lot of applications even outside fitness, as this is something that we probably struggle with daily. I can offer a simple example here in a form you can probably imagine. Let's say you've set a new goal, like trying to get into shape. In order to achieve this goal, you want to start going to the gym. By going to the gym, you are creating a change in your usual routine, and a new activity gets added that by itself may be something that's not necessarily pleasurable, but something that you realize needs to get done for an ulterior benefit. The thing is that once you start doing this and you're trying to respect a weekly schedule, what happens often is that you're basically in a situation where oftentimes you are not actually following through with it. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you want to go to the gym, you must go through a lot of hurdles before arriving there. Why do I say that? Well, you could, for example, start the day by going to work and wanting to go to the gym after work. But you either forget to take your gym bag or don't want to carry it with you to work. So first you must go home and pick up the bag. But by the time you get home, you might already be tired. The reasons for your fatigue may be numerous. Perhaps you had to do a long commute. Maybe you had a long day at work. Or you didn't sleep enough the day before. And in your head, you're already thinking, do I really want to go through all of that struggle of going back to the gym? I'm not really feeling this is a good day for this. Well, tomorrow is a new day. I'm sure tomorrow I'll find the time to go to the gym. Well, tomorrow rolls in, and surprise, you have a cold. And you can't go to the gym because you're not feeling well. And again, you might think, that's fine. It can be helped. No one would reasonably expect you to be going to the gym while feeling ill. So the gym gets postponed again for tomorrow, when perhaps it's Friday and you want to go out with some friends, and going to the gym might make you be late to that outing, so you skip that day as well. These were just 3 days, but the list can go on and on. In essence, you can easily end up in a situation where, despite having a new activity that you're trying to pursue, for one reason or another, this activity gets pushed further and further into the future until it is either forgotten or no longer relevant. Oftentimes, what happens is that you end up prioritizing a lot more your short-term happiness over your long-term happiness. Now, obviously, you're going to the gym because you're trying to make a real change in your life. You want to get into shape because you know it will help you stay healthier, feel more at ease with your body, and help you build strength and endurance. But of course, that won't happen overnight. It will take months, maybe even years of dedication of going to the gym on a frequent basis and not skipping days. That is long-term happiness. Whereas when you just have that small decision of, am I going to the gym today or stay at home and watch movies, it feels obvious to choose movies as that brings the most pleasure right now. That is short-term happiness. So when you don't feel like today is a good day for an activity, but swear to yourself that you will pick it up tomorrow, in essence you can imagine it's kind of like a relay race. You are passing the torch, so to speak, to your future self to carry. But the problem is that you do not know your future self and what situation he will be in, and by passing that torch to him, you are not ensuring that he will do what you set out for him. After all, he might also be going through similar things as you are, because in the end, he is you plus 1 day, not you 20 years from now. So it's quite natural that they'll probably still be very similar to you in the sense that they might have things going on in their life. They might also not feel like going to the gym, and so they'll pass the torch again, metaphorically speaking, to their future self. And thus the torch keeps getting passed until its flame runs out. So you have sacrificed your long-term happiness in exchange for short-term happiness. Yet you might not feel in that initial moment that you did a bad thing. In your mind, You haven't skipped going to the gym entirely, you just passed the responsibility to your future self, and in the process of doing so, created a burden on your future self to do this. And of course, burdens have the unfortunate consequence of accumulating in time. So if you keep just burdening your future self with doing the things that you should be doing now, then again, you're most likely not going to achieve them either way. So yeah, now you must be thinking how frustrating this is, setting up intricate goals yet unconsciously putting them off to a future you that won't magically take care of everything. This frustration has a name. It is called the empathy gap. This concept states that whilst we are very capable of empathizing with ourselves, we find it hard to empathize with others, as we can find it hard to put ourselves in their specific situation and frame of mind. The first part sounds reasonable. After all, we are always our best defenders, and we always understand ourselves better than anyone else could. And the second part, whilst not intuitive at first glance, makes sense once you think of it. After all, haven't we all made the mistake of assuming someone will do something just because that's what we would do in that situation, and then be surprised when that's not the case? At which point you might ask, hang on, what does empathy have to do with the weird metaphor about you passing the torch of responsibility to your future self? Well, you see, an interesting corollary of the empathy gap happens when dealing with our future selves. Usually, the empathy gap is an issue because you might have people of diverse backgrounds unable to get along with each other because they don't realize each of them is unique in their own way and has different perspectives and ways of dealing with things. When we are dealing with our future selves, on the other hand, we also don't empathize with them because we think they are different from us instead of realizing we are almost the same. Instead of putting ourselves in our future one's shoes, we construct this utopic image of your future self as being this much more responsible person, this much more capable person, this person that for some reason doesn't have the same job and same worries as us, the same problems and the same schedule as us. So for you, it's easy to think of your future self as that miracle person that will be able to achieve what you are unable to do right now. But if we were capable to empathize truly with our future selves, then we would be able to realize that what we are doing is not something that can be just passed on to us in the future. It's something that we need to act on now. And the sad reality is that oftentimes, but not doing the things that we should be doing now and passing them on to our future self, the only thing that we are doing is that we're just actively putting ourselves down, in the sense that just like when you fail to pay a bill at the right time and postponing it, you're making it worse by accumulating debt on top of it. So essentially, each time we postpone doing something, it will only get harder and harder to do later down the line. It can even be something as simple as needing to do the groceries. You might have avoided doing them when you realized the fridge was getting empty, as you'd had a hard day and you didn't feel like you were up to the task of doing it on the spot. But if you then wait for a few days until there is no food left, you have no choice but to go, regardless of how you are feeling there and then. Since you lost the luxury of choosing when to go, perhaps at a more reasonable time during the weekday, you are now forced to do them at a much more crowded time during the weekend. This means you'll probably get more frustrated and might not even find all the things that you wanted to buy. You'll probably also be very hungry since you had nothing to eat at home, so you'll be more tempted to buy a lot of snacks and other unhealthy food. By kicking the can down the road, so to speak, you've only created an even more difficult situation for yourself later. As a result, this is one of those cases where again, we can be our own worst enemies in a sense, because we find it so easy to understand ourselves now, but not understand our future selves. The takeaway message here would be, try to really understand your future self in a real sense, not in this imaginary position of them being able to do everything that you are not able to do now. Rather, look at yourself more closely and realize just how much more he resembles you and keep in mind that where he diverges, he might not always diverge towards the better. That's one thing you can try. Another one would be to think about what things are important to you. If you're going to incorporate something new in your daily routine, try to make a point of always trying to do it and not postpone it. If you truly think about your future and realize that, okay, in a few months' time, I'll probably be even busier than I am now. So if there is any point where I can pick up any healthy habits, there's no time like the present. You need to decide that you are the one that's going to perform that activity and not find any kind of excuses for postponing that activity. You should also try to work around your schedule so that it works for instead of against that activity. For example, if you know you need to do an activity that's not so pleasant to you, you should start with that activity first. You might be tempted to start with smaller things, as they're easier to do, and leave the mammoth task for later. But because more tasks usually come in droves, they can still build up and make you more tired and less focused and able to pick up new things. So by starting with the harder thing, then you're sure that you have enough energy for it. You can also treat this method as a kind of reward, as you started with the hard things that you need to do that aren't always necessarily pleasant, but by the end of it, you are rewarded because now you can do the easier things or even take some time off for leisure. Think of it as doing the adulting first and the fun second, as you always have time for fun, so you might as well start with the adulting first while you still have the energy. Whether we like it or not, a certain number of tasks still need to be completed by the end of the day, so the faster you can get them out of the way, the faster you can go back to the more pleasurable things in your life. I mean, that's why most jobs, if possible, tend to start in the morning, because usually your employers are also trying to take advantage of your best hours, as people only have so many hours during which they can be productive in a day. So yeah, that's another thing that you can do. And trust me, I understand that it is difficult to put yourself in that space, but you must understand that this empathy gap, it is not something that you can eliminate completely, and it impacts us in multiple ways like I mentioned earlier. So when you're trying to incorporate new healthier behaviors, like changing your diet or increasing the amount of exercise you perform in a week, understand that, of course, the empathy gap will be a factor, so just try to be more aware and learn to be more understanding with your future self and not overburden them with your present tasks. And if you feel bad for not understanding your future self, do keep in mind it also happens between you and other people, as they are their own unique personality with their own set of decisions and values who react differently to situations when compared to you. I think that's why it's good to understand that the empathy gap is not a deficiency or something that's wrong. Just with some of us, we all have this issue, and we all find it sometimes difficult to fully understand ourselves from the past, ourselves from the future, or other people around us. After all, it's so hard to think outside the box that is our brain. So don't fret too much about it, just think a bit more about what you can change now that can help you, and instead of postponing things and hoping that it will get picked up at some point, always try to do them as soon as is reasonable, because in the end, when we postpone things and put them off for another time, the only person that gets impacted is ourselves. Alright everyone, thank you for tuning in once more. So I am happy to report this week that I've managed to lose 1 kilogram of weight. So now I'm down to 120.6 kilograms, which is amazing since I've not only recovered, let's say, the weight that I gained last week, but I also lost another 0.5 kilograms. So we have went back to progress, and whilst I do wish in the future to avoid incidents, so to speak, like last week, I'm glad to see that a week where I've actually monitored my calories has paid off as well as I had expected. I am also happy that this happened during a week that, to be honest, I didn't actually expect to be as productive as it has, because after all, I did attend a wedding. So as I said, I tried to apply some of the teachings I shared in last week's episode and tried to be reasonable about it, in the sense that at the wedding I did eat what you'd expect at a wedding, basically. So I only left foods that I felt were a bit too much, so at least I wasn't a plate clearer, so to speak. But I ended up eating as much as I wanted, and the way I managed to make it work was by eating less before and after the wedding to compensate. And as I said, given that I managed to lose 1 kilogram this week, I guess that method worked. So good news on that front as well. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, you can check the description of the episode if you want to check out the subreddit, or if you want to leave me a message on my email address. And I will see you next week. Cheers.